Hi everyone, this is Redneck-Alcatraz. I'm back with another reaction video. This time we're gonna do an old song that actually had a revival because of a video game. And that's going to be Big Iron by Marty Robbins. Now this song, if you're big fans of the Fallout series of games, you would might know this having popped up several times in Fallout New Vegas on the in-game radio stations. However, before it made an appearance in Fallout New Vegas, this song was actually recorded in February of 1960. No, I'm sorry. It was recorded in April of 59, released in February of 1960. I'm sorry. My apologies. Um, but it's an old song that is still it's an old favorite of mine. I've loved it for many years, even before Fallout New Vegas came out, honestly. I've done some a little bit of research. I've got some little history and interesting notes to the song. But before I go into that, as always, we're gonna go through the whole song. Then we'll go back through. I'll give you some info on it, and then we'll nitpick on and go over parts of the song as we go through it. So please stay tuned as we get into Big Iron by Marty Robbins.
To the town of our free rode a stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say. No one dared to ask his business, no one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was early in the morning when he rode into the town. He came riding from the south side, slowly looking all around. He's an outlaw, loose and running, came the whisper from each lip, and he's here to do some business with a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. In this town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red. Many men had tried to take him, and that many men were dead. He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more, 1 in 19 more. Now the stranger started talking, made it plain to folks around. Was an Arizona ranger, wouldn't be too long in town. He came here to take an outlaw back alive or maybe dead, and he said it didn't matter, he was after Texas Red, after Texas Red. Wasn't long before the story was relayed to Texas Red. But the outlaw didn't worry men that tried before were dead. 20 men had tried to take him, 20 men had made a slip. 21 would be the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. The morning passed so quickly it was time for them to meet. It was 20 past 11 when they walked out in the street. Folks were watching from the windows, everybody held their breath. They knew this handsome ranger was about to meet his death, about to meet his death. There was 40 feet between them when they stopped to make their play. And the swiftness of the ranger is still talked about today. Texas Red had not cleared leather for a bullet fairly ripped, and the ranger's aim was deadly with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. It was over in a moment and the folks had gathered round. There before them lay the body of the outlaw on the ground. Oh, he might have went on living, but he made one fatal slip when he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip. Big iron, big iron. When he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip.
All right. All right. That was Big Iron by Marty Robbins. I don't know if you caught some of that in there. I kept starting to want to sing to it because it's a song I like and it's just an easy one to keep going with. And I'm like, y'all aren't here to listen to my horrible, horrible singing. You want to hear that. So I should probably actually mute my mic so in case I do, then y'all don't have to hear me. Oh well. But yes. Um so I actually pulled up some history on this song. It's actually quite interesting. The inspiration, at least according to Wikipedia, so take that with with a cup of salt or a few grains, depending on your preference. Of the inspiration for this was actually a revolver that Marty Robbins happened to be in a shop when a customer bought it. It was custom built for a guy, and it was a huge thing of a revolver handgun, chambered in 44 Magnum with a 12-inch barrel. Very unusual. Typically, a long barrel revolver would actually be like a 7.5, maybe an 8-inch. 12-inch was rather ridiculous. Um, but that's what it was, with an oversized grips and frame. Apparently, it was custom built by a man named Andy Anderson. It was custom built for a customer, and the customer picked it up, and Marty Robbins happened to be in the shop when he got it. Um, Apparently, according to this article, he then just tried out drawing it, and Marty Robbins was fascinated by his fast drawing of it. A week later, Andy Anderson, the guy who built the gun, received in the mail a recording of Big Iron. Marty Robbins apparently had it sent to him uh, because it's like, you were the inspiration of this. I'm sending you a copy of this. Um, Mr. Anderson apparently also had a personal firearm that he had built for himself that he actually called Big Iron, which was chambered in 44 Special with a standard 7.5-inch barrel. So that's a little inspiration behind the song involving this. So the Big Iron was an actual gun, custom made, but this was apparently a decent sized one, and the inspiration for the song itself was a rather huge uh handgun for that day and age. Not talking like 1800s when the song is supposed to be taking place. I'm talking about the late 50s when the song was written and recorded. Remember, they didn't have some of the monstrous, huge handguns that we have nowadays that are designed for like elephant and bear. The biggest thing on the market was literally a 44 Magnum in like a 6-inch barrel. Now you've got an oversized one with a 12-inch monster of a thing. Um, and I don't know if y'all caught my glimpse earlier, because I was looking at the cover. I'm looking how in this picture it's portraying him holding the gun, and I'm looking at this and I'm like, that's a good way to shoot yourself in the foot. I actually did learn how to do a plain quick draw, uh, growing up, and did practice it. Never a good shot, but at least I could pull it off. One of the things you're explicitly told and taught very early on, do not grab the hammer and the trigger at the same time. Because the moment your thumb slips, that hammer drops and it goes off and it's liable to hit you in the leg or the foot. So, anyone who's ever interested in shooting, do not do this. Do not. Do not put your finger on the trigger until you're actually ready to make it go bang. Do not. Do not. Okay, enough of that rant. Let's go back through the song. Y'all don't need to hear me rant on firearm safety, but just this big no no. Big no no. All right. time for me to shut up and go through the song. While hearing that guitar, I just now noticed there's a bass in the background. I didn't really notice it before, but just now I was like, wait a minute, there's a bass in there.
To the town of our free road.
I'll jump back a little bit. You hear that bass? Just you can hear the guitar, but in the very background you hear the thump 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 of a bass.
To the town of our
Never
free
noticed that
road,
till
a
now.
stranger one fine day. Hardly spoke to folks around him, didn't have too much to say.
Their own business didn't have to say a
No
whole
one dared to ask his business, no one dared to make a slip. The stranger there among them had a big iron on his hip, big iron on his hip.
Okay, I'm gonna point out a little thing here. In the Old West, it was not uncommon for people to carry or possess firearms with them. Riding around with it open generally meant because for them it was for mainly protection, not necessarily fighting. So if you're a ranch hand, you carried one for protection of yourself and the cattle and all that. Um, Riding into town with it belted on and ready typically had a whole different meaning. Um, Especially if it's like open and exposed, it's like I'm here, I can use this, I can fight. Don't start nothing that don't if you don't want to end up dead.
It was
Had a whole different
early
meaning,
in the morning when he rode into the town.
my opinion anyway.
He came riding from the south side, slowly looking all around. He's an outlaw, loose and running, came the whisper from each lip. And he's here to do some business with a big iron on his hip.
See, just by his actions, that slow riding, looking around, casing the place out, gun on his side, ready. Everybody's already everybody's got that warning bell going off of uh oh, gonna this is probably gonna be a problem. At which point everybody's gonna be getting out of the way to not get on the wrong side of him.
Big iron on his hip. In this town there lived an outlaw by the name of Texas Red. Many men had tried to take him, and that many men were dead. He was vicious and a killer, though a youth of 24, and the notches on his pistol numbered 1 in 19 more. 1 in 19 more.
All right, a little bit of more history. Notches on the gun. This fact is disputed historically. There's been a lot of statements stated that they did do this, or they didn't, or it was only done by idiots. Um, it varies a lot, but the notches on the gun were to represent people you've killed. For each one you killed, you filed a notch in the gun, typically on the handle or the back of the frame. Like I said, it's disputed. So whether it was really, really done or not, or it was only done by a handful of people who wanted to brag about the people they've killed, I don't know. Personally, I think it's a really dumb idea because that means you're filing down the grip on your gun, making it smaller and just harder to hold because you're cutting like angled grooves in it. So it's going to be harder on the hand. It's going to be harder to hold because you're losing material off that grip. So that's probably why it's considered stupid. Also, that's not really a thing to be proud of. Just a lot of them, it wasn't a thing to be proud of. So, but that's what it means. Notches on the gun means is in reference to how many people that you've killed. Not necessarily in a head-on fight
Now
either.
the stranger started talking, made it plain to folks around. Was an Arizona ranger, wouldn't be too long in town. He came here to take an outlaw back alive or maybe dead. And he said it didn't matter, he was after Texas Red. After Texas Red.
Little history on the Rangers. To my now, I don't know as much about the Arizona Rangers, but as far as the Texas Rangers, they were a law enforcement. Well, they were. I guess law enforcement is a way to put it. Um, there isn't a real good accurate way to describe how they operated back in those days. Nowadays, they're a law enforcement agency. Back then, they were authorized by the state to take care of criminals, whether that meant you arrested them and brought them back for trial, or they ended up dead. It really didn't matter. Their jurisdiction was the whole state. They weren't isolated to any one place. They could go anywhere and take care of any criminal or any problem and be authorized by the state to do it. There weren't a whole lot of laws or restrictions against them. They were essentially given free reign. Um, so then they were also, if you look at like the early Texas Rangers, most of them were not necessarily good people. Um, but they took the job to fight for the local populace, the people, to take care of criminals, threats, and dangers, and do so knowing that they're going out there, they're going to have to take care of it themselves or with a group of others. And if something bad happens, you're kind of on your own because they're outside of the group they're with you, there's no reinforcements to really come help you. Now, there were cases where they would send in a group of rangers, things would go badly, and then reinforcements would get sent in, but we're talking that's a larger scale engagement and happening, not after a person. And I believe, but I'm not sure, the Arizona Rangers were styled and patterned after the Texas Rangers. So the Texas Rangers have a very unique and colorful history in some ways. But they did a lot without a whole. They accomplished a whole lot and did it without a whole lot of people. So if you're ever interested, go check them out. It's interesting history. Back to the song.
Wasn't long before the
You're not
story
here to hear
was
me rant,
relayed
right?
to Texas Red.
Okay, maybe you are. But
But the outlaw didn't worry men that tried before were dead.
next day,
20 men had tried to take him, 20 men had made a slip. 21 would be the ranger with the big iron on his hip.
confidence sucker, ain't
Big
it?
iron on his hip.
Then again, if he's 20 and 0,
The morning passed so quickly it was time for them to meet. It was 20 past 11 when they walked out in the street.
strange how exact the time is.
Folks were watching from the windows, everybody held their breath. They knew this handsome ranger was about to meet his death, about to meet his death. There was 40 feet between them when they stopped to make their play. And the
Distance.
swiftness of the ranger is still talked about today. Texas Red had not cleared leather for a bullet fairly ripped, and the ranger's aim was deadly with the big iron on his hip.
Hadn't even cleared leather before a bullet fairly ripped. That means when they both went for their guns, the outlaw, he hadn't even gotten it out of the holster. Clearing leather means you have cleared the leather, gun is out. If he hadn't cleared leather, it means it's similar to how this picture is portrayed here. The gun is still in the holster somewhat. It can't be brought upward into play because it ain't cleared the holster. So he's still in mid draw, or at least in the beginnings of his draw, when the other guy's already firing. And his aim was deadly, so means he was accurate at the draw at 40 feet. Not the easiest thing to do. Testament
Big
to skill and
iron on
speed.
his hip. It was over in a moment, and the folks had gathered round. There before them lay the body of the outlaw on the ground. Oh, he might have went on living, but he made one fatal slip when he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip. Big iron on his hip. Big iron, big iron. When he tried to match the ranger with the big iron on his hip. Big iron on his hip.
Yep, well, that's Big Iron. I probably talked a little bit longer than I should have about some of the history stuff, but some of that I think is worth noting. Most songs have a story behind them, and I'm always interested in that. I mean, I've stated that in a couple of comments on previous songs that I'm always interested in the story behind the song. Like, how did it come to be? What is the story the song tells? And that. So that's always of interest to me. All right. So, but yeah, this was Big Iron by Marty Robbins. Thank you for watching. I'm gonna give the typical YouTuber rant of if you liked it, please like, share, subscribe, check out some of my other stuff. I've got Patreon and Subscribestar if you want to support any of my stuff or get early access. Subscribers there usually get access to anything I record a week early, so y'all get first first viewing. Otherwise, if you want to skip all the usual YouTuber nonsense, that's fine. Thank you for watching. Drop me some comments, some suggestions. Let me know what you think. If there's some historical aspects to this that I haven't mentioned, or some fun moments from Fallout New Vegas that this song was playing on that y'all want to share, do it. I read everything y'all post. So, thank you, and I'll see y'all next time.